today we're talking about step 2, which is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So before we even go into that step, let's once again, I like to go in sequence, right? There's an order of things on purpose. So we talked about step 1 last month. We admitted we were powerless over food, that our lives had become unmanageable. Okay, great. So we've come to believe, we've admitted, right? We've admitted we have a problem, and we believe that our lives are unmanageable. So as we discerned last month, it's not that our lives are unmanageable because we're eating compulsively. Our lives are unmanageable when we eat compulsively to deal with that. That's what the dash is explaining to us. Now, the jump from 1 to 2 is very specific, because I can say, okay, like when I first came into program 20 something years ago, when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, I couldn't quite understand the idea that, okay, well, I'm powerless. There's nothing for me to do. Like, I'm powerless, so I guess I'll just eat, whatever. Not understanding that, number one, that wasn't the end of the story. And number two, that powerlessness was actually the opening of a door. It wasn't the permission to give up. And so the other piece of it I had to do some research into understanding that even if I wanted to stop myself, I didn't have that ability anymore. So that took about 2 years of research, when I would watch myself say, I don't want to do this, and then go do the thing. And then once I hit that, which was terrifying, then it was, okay, well, I really can't stop myself, period, but something else can. And the only way that worked for me, the only way I could get from 1 to 2 was to see people for whom that had happened. Because for me, if I had never gone to a meeting, I would never have, first of all, never been exposed to the steps, obviously, but also the idea that I could get better would never have occurred to me. I thought that I was just going to have to deal with this with my own plan Bs for the rest of my life. Like, for me, bulimia was plan B. That was the best I could come up with on my own. So this is the idea that, okay, I cannot stop this thing myself, but I'm coming to believe that something else can. Now, that coming to believe can be a long process. It may not happen overnight. For some people, you walk into a meeting, you see it, boom, you're good and you're abstinent and you're off to the races. For other people, it takes time. It took me 2 years to come to believe that something greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Number one, I didn't even know what sanity looked like. And number two, belief comes to believe in something means that I'm willing to let go of something I believed before that. Believing what I believed before that was, this is me, this is my life, this is how it's going to be forever. There is no way out except for me fixing this myself, which, to be fair to me, was what the entire world told me, that pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get it done. Certainly nobody was talking about higher power or God, except like Madonna, when she was having her Ray of Light moment, where she was doing her spirituality album, which is actually her best album in my opinion. But anyway, sorry, side note. But the point is, nobody was talking about God and spirituality. That wasn't like a thing. It was just, you have a problem, go fix it. And also, you're a freak because you're fat, but don't get too thin either, because then we'll think you're gross. Maybe, lots of cute messaging there. But anyway, the point was, I came to my first meeting and I heard someone refer to themselves as a compulsive overeater, and I got like whiplash. I was like, what? I had never heard those words before, and it was a revelation to me, because if somebody had a name for this thing, that meant it was a real thing. And that meant that I wasn't the only one who had it, that there were people who had this thing also, and they're all sitting here, which means maybe they know what to do about it. So that was the beginning of my coming to believe. Then I had to start to understand how my disease worked on a deeper level. The dance that I did with myself with food, it took a little bit of time. And then once I hit that moment of, I can't do that, I can't stop myself even when I want to, that opened the door to something else. Because until then, it was me. I had to be the guy. But now it was maybe something else. I wasn't sure what that something else was, because quite frankly, like, if somebody told me that I should talk to God, I I was not interested in that at all for a variety of reasons. And so, sorry, hold on one second. Admit someone. I admit everyone. I accept all. I accept you all as you are, friends. But anyway, and I remember sitting in a meeting. I was 22 years old. And there were women there who had what I wanted at the time. They had long-term weight loss, large amounts that they were keeping off for extended periods of time. They had careers and families and lives. And I was like, this sort of light bulb thing happened where I was like, maybe if I do what they do, I'll have what they have. That was the beginning of coming to believe that it was possible for me to have what these women had. And that was the night where I was like, okay. And that was the night I got struck abstinent and was willing to start. So I didn't exactly know that it was a higher power that I wanted to restore me to sanity. And quite frankly, sanity wasn't what I was going after. I wanted to look cute. That was literally it. I wanted to lose weight and be cute and be in my 20s and pretty and have men want me because then I'd have value. That's what I wanted. But I did come to believe that if these women had that thing, that maybe I could too. That was the beginning of that. So the coming to believe beyond that happened on a day-to-day basis of seeing what was happening to my body, to my mind, to all of these things that were shifting. And then what happened was I had to get real with God about 2 years later after I was thin for the first time in my life. And I expected everyone to just like, join this like citywide musical number celebrating the fact that I was thin now. Like I was, I had finally done the thing and everybody should be celebrating. I realized that one of the big misconceptions that addicts have is that we're supposed to get like gold medals for being a baseline human being. like, oh, look what I did. It's like, yeah, you parked your car. Good job. Like you didn't get in a car accident on your way to the grocery store. Congratulations. Like that. This is what we do. We think we're so excellent. And it's like, no, we just got out of the red, but I expected, no, I lost a lot of weight and I don't eat compulsively anymore. You guys should all admire me. And they're like, you're still a jerk. No one wants to hang out with you. And so 2 years into my abstinence as a thin person, looking like I was a well person, although I wasn't, I was too thin and I was sick. But I realized that I could not maintain a healthy relationship with anyone. I hated everyone. I hated my job. I could not engage with another human without walking away with a resentment. I was rageful all the time. And that's when the sanity piece started to click in for me. Like I had all the things that I was supposed to want. I have them now. Why am I insane? So I realized that the sanity had nothing really to do with weight, but I couldn't really understand that until the weight was gone. For some people, it happens while they're in the weight loss process or the weight gain process or whatever it is. And it works how it works. For me personally, I needed like empirical evidence that being thin and pretty was not going to cut it. So at that point, I started to understand, oh, I'm still not well, which means I have to work the 12 steps because that's what's going to restore me to actual sanity. Because I was not a sane person at all. And as I said, this was a slow coming to process in AA, and I'm sure they say it in OA too. Like I came to believe, I show up first, I wake up at little by little as I listen to people's stories. And then, sorry, hold on, I'm admitting someone, listen to people's stories. And then eventually I start to believe that it happens for me. And I want to just share something else about belief that really helps me. It's from the Joe and Charlie tapes in AA, and they talk about belief versus experience, because belief has to be the leader in order for me to have an experience. I have to believe that there is a possibility that this thing will work in order for me to take the action that will lead to an experience. So Joe and Charlie explain it like this. Let's say you have a car and you drive to my town in Israel and your car breaks down in my town. And you say, hey, Ria, my car broke down. Do you know of a good mechanic who can fix my car? And I say, yeah, there's a guy in town. His name is David, and he's a really great mechanic. He's fixed my car a few times. You should go see him. So at this point, you've now listened to my experience and you believe that your car could be fixed. So you take your car and you go to the mechanic and David fixes it for you. And he does a very good job. And you say, great. Now, every time I'm in Riaz town in Israel, I know that I can go to David's mechanic shop and he will fix my car for me. You have the experience now. But it started with the belief that you had that it was possible because I told you so. So that really is the foundation of step 2, that I have to believe first so that it's possible so I can take the action. And that's how this book, The Big Book of AA, is built. They provide, and I've said this before in these meetings, Bill Wilson was a salesman. He likes to play himself off as this big stockbroker, but he was really like a salesman, essentially. And the key thing in sales is you present a problem and then you present a solution. So they spend a good long time in this book presenting us with the problem of alcoholism, which is all step 1, which we talked about last month. And then they say there is a solution. And the solution they talk about is all through stories of people who have gotten well. These are people who went through this and now they're like this. And so you read that enough times and you go, oh, and it even says it at the end of this chapter. Hold on one second. I'll tell you. Yeah. At the end of there is a solution. It says, very, very last paragraph. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste, right? People are telling their stories and we'll go back to them in a minute. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing, right? So the idea is that we are presenting evidence to help other people believe so that they can make the leap to do this work. Because if I don't have a belief that this could actually work, why would I do it? The only evidence I have is that it's worked for other people, which is why we go to meetings, why we work with other people. Bill was lucky. There always has to be the first guy who sort of takes the leap himself and sees if it works. And Bill was one of them. So that's why he tells his story. And also the comparison between who they were and who they've become. So they give a very clear outline of what these people were like. These are people who are hopeless, who are, destroying their families, all the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that they describe. And then it says, they outline the problem of once this person takes any alcohol into their body, that's it. It's game over. But then they say there is a solution. They give us the possibility of getting better. That's how we come to believe. And they have to sell us really, really hard because it says here, this is on page 25, almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which this process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. So there's 2 pieces here. First of all, the alcoholic knows the alcoholic, which means they are going to have to work really hard to convince us to do this and somehow make us think that it was our idea. Because alcoholics don't like to be told what to do. Addicts of any kind don't like to be told what to do. So somehow they need to present this thing in a way that says, this is the thing that happened over here. And then I go, oh, I should do that. And they're like, good for you. That was a great idea. When the whole time they've been like, you should probably do this, right? But they're warning us ahead of time that this is going to be work. But look at what you were like before. Look at what you're up against, right? It says, our lives were hopeless and futile. I can't think of anything more depressing than that. There's nothing to look forward to, and you're of no use. Futility means you're not accomplishing anything. You're just running your wheels. That's what life was like for me. I was like stuck in my own head, stuck in my own house. I was not able, I had so much potential, but no ability to do anything. And I thought, this is it. This is what I'm going to be. I'm just going to be alone forever and miserable and destroy all of my relationships and just hurt people for the rest of my life. And the truth, I was probably right. If I didn't have another solution, that's probably how it was going to go. And once I'm in enough pain And once I see how clearly how much damage I've caused, I come to believe that this is not sustainable and that there is a possibility of doing it differently. That's what coming to believe is about. Now, once they have established the coming to believe part, now we have to talk about came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So this is where a lot of us get tripped up, right? I don't know about you, but I had some beef with God when I was coming into this program. I didn't grow up in a religious household. I grew up in a traditional Jewish household, but there wasn't a lot of talk about God. I don't even remember my rabbi talking about God. It just wasn't cool. You know, it wasn't cool to talk about God, and nobody really believed in God. Like, God is dead. And then in my childhood and up until I was in my teens, a few really intense things happened in succession. My father became a religious Jew out of nowhere. Didn't warn any of us, didn't ask us if we were cool with him changing our lives entirely. I lost, when I was 14, I lost a classmate to cancer, a friend of my mom's to AIDS. And then when we were in Israel, our friend got killed in a terror attack on the bus. And even before that, when I was younger, like 8 or 9, I learned about the Holocaust. And I always had this weird sort of intense reaction to it. There's a part of me, I'm not such a woo-woo person, but there's a part of me that feels like soul-wise I was probably there. But that I have no data to back that up, just a feeling. But the point is that it really, God scared the crap out of me. Like, really bad things happened to people, and especially Jewish people. Like, I was Jewish, I'm Jewish. So like, that's like an extra scary kind of like package we've got going on there. And I just, when my father became observant and Elisa, my friend in Israel, got killed, I was just like, I'm good. Like, I never didn't believe in God, but I did not want to associate with that God. That God felt fearful and punishing to me. I wanted no relationship with that God at all. And so I just broke up with God. Mind you, I went and tried every single other spiritual path on the planet in the interim. Wandering, and I went to the ashrams, and I met like an Indian avatar, and I did the Tai Chi, and I did, like I read all the books, I did all the things. But I wanted to be like spiritual. I didn't want to deal with God. I just kind of wanted to have, it was probably just another addiction of me trying to feel better, to be honest. And maybe have a little peace, which those things do offer. But for an addict who's using, it's nearly impossible to get close. Anyway, and so when I first got abstinent 20 something years ago, my sponsor at the time said, you're going to need to start developing a relationship with a power greater than yourself. And I knew what she meant. Power greater than yourself. We know what you're saying. You really mean God, so just say it. And I was like, no, if you knew the God that you were asking me to hang out with, like, you'd understand. Like, I have extenuating circumstances. God and I have been through it. Like, we're good. And she said to me, if the God of your understanding doesn't work for you, fire that God and hire another one. And I was like, holy shit. Like, like I wasn't even like religious at all, but I was a little scandalized by that, like grabbing my little pearls, like, you can't fire God. You can't do that. And the idea that she basically conveyed to me was like, if God is everything, God can be anything. And also, it doesn't really matter what you think God is. As long as God is a house with infinite doors. Just pick one and go in. It doesn't matter. The one caveat she said is that your higher power cannot be you. Now, there are people who come into 12-step rooms and their higher power is like a doorknob or the power of the group. I have friends who have been abstinent in OA for years and years and years, and they don't believe in God, and that works for them, that serves them. But they will tell you that their spiritual relationship with whatever higher power they choose has evolved in some way from when they first walked in. So if you walk in and say, or if I walk in and say, my higher power is the doorknob on my door. Cool. If that gets me in the door and it starts working, great. If in 5 years my higher power is still that doorknob, we got a problem, because it has to evolve. It has to be a bigger thing, because as we start having an experience based on our belief, it's going to expand. It can't not. They describe it as a personality change, an awareness of power greater than ourselves working in our lives. So as much as I appreciate what the doorknob did to me in the beginning, a doorknob cannot facilitate the kind of change that happened to me. So if I have had the experience that they promise in this book, your concept of a power greater than yourself, or my concept of power greater than myself, will evolve. It has to. So the God that I developed a relationship with, and I'll tell you, the first conversation I had with that God, I went to the beach and I was like, my sponsor said I have to talk to you, so I'm talking to you. Okay, I did it. Okay, bye. Like that's where we started. Now it's a totally different kind of situation, because I have empirical evidence to back up that relationship. At the time, I had to believe, because my sponsor told me that having a relationship with a higher power would work. I had come to believe that that could be true. Then I took the action. Now, because I've had the experience as a result of working the steps, I have a relationship with a dynamic God that I can not define at all. I have no idea what God is, but I can show you where God works in my life for sure. That's the point. Now, the sanity piece. So we have to believe. So we've come to believe now. We've come to believe that a power greater than ourselves, so once again, cannot be you. And we can't think ourselves out of this. I've said this 100,000 times, and I'll say it again. We cannot solve a problem with the thinking that created it. My mind is the problem. They say it 1,000 times in this book, right? Our thinking is, the problem originates in his mind rather than his body. So it's my mind that gets me back to using. So my mind is not the thing that's going to think me out of this. It's going to think me back into it over and over again. It's like trying to get myself to stop blinking. I am going to go back. So I need something outside of my brain that's going to reach in and rearrange it. Something that's not me. And I'll tell you something else. It's not another person either. Other people can be God's messengers, and they can deliver things and offer insights that can be life-changing. Absolutely. The women and men that I have relationships with in this program have changed my life. They are the most important people in my life, in addition to my immediate family. But they are not my God. And they are not the ones who facilitated this spiritual experience. They're not. They're vehicles, they're conduits, but they are not the source. And it's very important that I made that distinction, because in the beginning, I totally made people my higher power. I am a black belt codependent. Okay. So my mom was my hero, for my savior, my everything, for years and years and years and years and years. She was the one who was supposed to come in and fix it for me. Then when I got abstinent, almost in defiance of her, like, even though she was in whatever, it was interesting. She actually had a perfectly healthy relationship with me. I had like a completely ridiculous relationship with her because I was, selfish. But anyway, I turned my sponsor at the time into a higher power, and that relationship blew up because I couldn't make a decision without asking her anything. I couldn't think or decide or make sense of anything without clearing it with her. This was just me replacing my mother with somebody else. Over and over, I did that with people, thinking that they were the ones who were going to change or save me. I was looking for a higher power, and I couldn't make the leap to God yet, so I used people. Maybe it served me in some way because my fellowship in the beginning was my lifeline, but they, again, could not facilitate a spiritual experience for me. They were just human beings doing the best they could. Imperfect people cannot facilitate spiritual experiences for each other. They can share their experience and wisdom, but they are not the ones who are going to make a change. So that power greater than myself could not be me, and it could not be another human. Now, people say, the power of the group. Absolutely. There is a power in meeting together and in sharing our experience. But even that cannot facilitate a change without work. And that work is done with myself, with my sponsor, and with God. In step 5, it says we turn our inventory over to ourselves, to God, and to another human being. So I can sit in meetings and I can hear incredible things, and they might even be life-changing, but they're not my higher power. Because what happens during COVID when we can't meet in person? What happens when my is down and I can't call somebody? What does that mean? That I've lost access to my higher power? No. Because people are not my higher power. They can be vessels through which my higher power works, for sure, but they cannot be the source. Okay, so now I came to believe, because I've seen evidence from other people, and I'm willing to try what they say. A power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. So the power greater than myself has to be somebody who's not me and not another human. Now that's going to restore me to sanity. Now, if I'm going to be restored to sanity, we have to understand that I'm insane. Because otherwise, if I think I'm fine, then what are we even doing here? So for me, for a long time, I thought I was completely fine. I was just fat. I didn't have a problem. I mean, I had a problem with food. I get it. But once I stopped eating and it got thin, everything was going to be fine. So this brings me back to what I talk about all the time, my favorite paragraph in the big book, where Dr. Silkworth says that we are restless, irritable, and discontent unless we can again experience the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks which we see others taking with impunity. Okay, so a person who gets abstinent or sober is just unmedicated. I'm going to say that again, okay? When a person gets sober, they have just stopped taking their medication. That's it. That's why you see a lot of people who have just gotten sober or abstinent doing a lot of damage, or they're all over the place and there's a lot of imbalance in their life. And I don't say this with judgment, because I was one of them. They are still insane because their problem was never the drugs or the alcohol or the food or whatever it was. The problem was always their default setting of restless, irritable, and discontent. Insanity. It was always their brain talking to them, telling them stories about them being the center of the universe and everybody needing to be around them, or they're a piece of shit that the world revolved around, and they have to get everybody to pay attention to them or not pay attention to them, or fix this or fix that. And discomfort is terrifying, so make sure everybody's okay and I'm okay all the time. We cannot be sane unless we are willing to turn our will and our lives over, unless we are willing to live differently, unless we are willing to work the steps. If I do not work the steps, I am just an unmedicated psychopath. That's it. I am not a well person. And I made that mistake when I lost a lot of weight and I thought, I'm thin and pretty now. That's all I needed to do. And the truth is, in American culture, I was probably right. I probably could have just continued living and done my thing and caused a lot of damage. The problem was I was miserable and I didn't want to be in my own skin. And it terrified me because this is what I was told was going to make it all better. That's when I realized I was insane. Because it has nothing to do with how much I'm eating. I was using eating to deal with my insanity. And I had to acknowledge that before I could see that whatever higher power I'd chosen on could restore me to sanity, whatever that looked like. I had no idea what sanity looked like. I had no model for sanity. My parents were wonderful, wonderful people. My father's still alive, thank God. Turned 72 yesterday. Very, wonderful people. But, had their stuff. I never saw real balance and God-centeredness. I didn't see healthy communication or boundaries or trust and reliance. I didn't see any of that. I had no idea what that looked like. All I knew was, if there's a problem, go fix it. And if you can't fix it, you're a loser. That's it. So I thought I was a loser. I have to be willing to be shown a new definition of how my life is supposed to look. I have to let go of all of my ideas about what a manageable life looks like, how I'm supposed to manage it, what I'm supposed to do, what my role is in this world, and say, I genuinely don't know what sanity or a healthy life or who I'm supposed to be looks like, but I'm willing to be shown. And I believe that I can be if I just follow instructions. That's actually a big leap. That's a big ask. We don't realize how big of a jump that is for most of us, because we come in going, I'm the boss. I got this. All I need to do is get this food thing under control and I will be a-okay. Everything's going to fall in line. Everything's going to be fine. I'm going to feel better and it won't be such a mess. And I'll go right back to what I was doing before. And by the way, when I came in, it was never about getting clean from food. It was about getting thin. My goal was to get thin and then go back to eating however I wanted to. Okay, I just wanted to get away with what I could get away with. So when they talk about this deflating of the ego, that's what they're talking about. It's not just, oh, I have a problem with food. It's, I'm insane. And I need something besides me to get me out of it, because I have tried and I can't. So 1 and 2 are very deeply linked, and they both have to be taken fully, not perfectly, but fully, in order to do step 3. Because why would I turn my will and my life over to something if I don't think there's a problem with the way I'm doing it? Right? So I want to look for a second. Hold on one second. Just looking in more about alcoholism. Right. So I want to just talk about Jim for a minute. Jim is my favorite. We love Jim. I want to just talk about him for a minute. I've talked about him before, but I want to really talk about him in the framework of step 2, not step 1. A lot of times we talk about Jim in step 1 and because he's in more about alcoholism. But let's talk about the sanity piece with Jim, okay? So first of all, in 2 paragraphs before, it says, we shall describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse into drinking, for obviously this is the crux of the problem, right? So that's the thesis of this whole book, by the way. Our thinking, our mental state, is actually the problem. So if you have a broken mental state, that pretty much says you're insane, right? I think that pretty much is. So what sort of thinking dominates an alcoholic who repeats time after time the desperate experiment of the first drink? So we're not just talking about I'm going to be able to drink this time. I'm more interested in the circumstances surrounding Jim's first drink. Okay, so let's look at his thinking, shall we? This is on page 35 of the big book, by the way. Our first example is a friend we shall call Jim. This man has a charming wife and family. He inherited a lucrative automobile agency. He had a commendable World War record. He is a good salesman. Everybody likes him. He is an intelligent man, normal so far as we can see, except for a nervous disposition. Okay? So Jim has it all. We've established this. There's nothing in his life that is wrong. He has a nice family. He has money. And in those days, when you had a commendable World War record, that meant you were like very respected among your peers. You went and served, you served your country, you protected us. Thank you. Like it's a good thing. People like you. It's a good reputation. Good salesman. That means he's very personable. He knows how to work with people. People like him. He's smart, normal, whatever that means, except for a nervous disposition. So already we sense that despite having everything, Jim is uncomfortable in his own skin. Okay, that's your first indicator. And again, we're not talking about his convincing himself about the drink. We're talking about the mental state before the drink, okay? He did no drinking until he was 35. In a few years, he became so violent when intoxicated, he had to be committed. On leaving the asylum, he came into contact with us. We told him what we knew of alcoholism and the answer he had found. He had made a beginning. His family was reassembled, and he began to work as a salesman for the business he had lost through drinking. Okay, so this man knew already what AA was about. He had met Bill. He had met these guys. He had gone and gotten his family back together, proven to them what was at, he had proven to himself what was at stake. He saw what he was going to lose by drinking, and he saw what was possible when he stopped drinking. Okay? All went well for a time, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. So, who cares? What does the spirituality have to do with this? To his consternation, he found himself drunk a half a dozen times in rapid succession. On each of these occasions, we worked with him, reviewing carefully what had happened. He agreed he was a real alcoholic and in a serious condition. He knew he faced another trip to the asylum if he kept on. Moreover, he would lose his family for whom he had a deep affection. Okay, so again, he knows better. He already knows. This is not an alcoholic who's just kind of out there. He has an awareness of what's going on. Yet he got drunk again. We asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. Okay, this is his story. I came to work on Tuesday morning. My question always is, where were you on Monday? Right? We've been through this a bunch of times. Many of you have heard me go through this, but always, that's every time I read that, I go, where were you on Monday? I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. Again, irritated is a euphemism. If I messed up my business because of my food and somebody else bought it and then they hired me to work for that company, irritated is not the word I would use. Right? I would use a word like prideful AF, annoyed, resentful, pissed off. Irritated is not the word I would use, right? Ashamed, embarrassed, and also feeling like indebted. They did me a solid by giving me a job, you know? I had a few words with the boss, which probably the boss was like, where were you? And he was like, fuck off. And like, that's probably what happened. Because I used to own this company. Don't tell me what to do. But nothing serious, of course. Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. On the way, I felt hungry, so I stopped at a roadside place where they have a bar. I had no intention of drinking. And we know how this goes. He goes to the bar. He sits down. He has the experiment. He puts milk in his whiskey in his milk, and he ends up where he ends up, right? So it says here, by the way, on page 37, whatever precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? Now, in this case, they're referring to it in regards to the choice to drink, which is true. It is insanity. He already knows what happens when he drinks. I'm curious about the beginning of that story, where he created a circumstance for himself, made himself out to be the victim of it, thought his life should go in a different way, got into conflict with someone who was actually living in reality, and then tried to punish all of them by getting drunk. The problem was never the drink. The problem was the insanity of him not accepting his own life before that, and then medicating it with alcohol. That's the insanity. We make ourselves so crazy. I mean, for me, I have a sponsor who explained to me, my thoughts lead to actions, right? My thoughts are the problem, not the action. For example, if I'm freaking out about not being able to pay my bills or my groceries, right? So I start freaking out. And if I'm freaking out, then I act out. Maybe I pick a fight with my husband, or I go take a client that I don't actually want to do because I feel like I need money right now. I plot and I plan and I scheme, and then I do damage. And then the damage is uncomfortable. So what do? I want to go eat. So the food was never the problem. It was the insanity of my thinking. Am I clear? Am I being clear about what I'm saying? Yeah? Okay. So the food or the alcohol or whatever it is the end of the sentence. The beginning of the sentence is my insanity, insisting that the world needs to go the way I think it should go, or that I can control things. I can control anything. So basically, when God's restoring us to sanity, it's not just the sanity around food. It's the sanity around the fact that I'm in charge of anything. That the way I'm living my life is a healthy one. That's why when it says late in the doctor's opinion, when we have a spiritual experience, then basically the need for alcohol goes away. Why? Because our thinking is different. Once we've taken the food out of our system, the physical factor, there's no craving anymore because it's gone. There's no physical craving. But the thinking that leads me back there is what needs tending to. And if I've had a spiritual experience, and if I'm working the steps, and if I'm in contact with God, and I've gotten my ego right-sized, the food isn't even part of the equation anymore because I don't need it, because my thoughts don't take me there. God's restored me to sanity and a sane way of looking at my life. And the only way for someone like me who had no frame of reference of what sanity looked like, the only way I was going to get there was by seeing that it was possible, which is how they wrote this book. They wrote this book saying, listen, this is what we were like, and this is what we're like now. And we have 100 of us, and 75% got it on the first try, and our lives are better. So it's possible for you too. And as a result, you and I are sitting here in 2026. So that coming to believe starts with hearing from other people that it's possible. And then taking the action to be, first of all, to believe that something more than me is going to do it, and not other people are going to do it, although other people are necessary and helpful. That it's going to not just change my addiction, it's going to change the way I think about everything. Because that's really my problem. Most people I know in recovery don't actually get that until down the road in recovery. They think that it's just the food that's the problem, but it's not. And I'm still, to this day, I mean, 2026, so however long I've been here, I'm still dealing with crazy thinking, because that's how I'm built. I'm better, way better than I used to be, trust me. But there's always more to be done. And I'm always coming to believe that God can restore me to sanity, because now I have evidence, because he's done it in so many other ways. So in that regard, I will say that 2 is important. It goes directly in tandem with 1, but we have to really get it and be willing to do it before we can even start the rest of the action steps. That foundation has to be solid before we move forward, because otherwise we're just going to find ourselves back here. And I think that's why a lot of people want this, and they really mean it when they say they're ready to do the work, but there's some part of them that either hasn't admitted or hasn't come to believe yet, for whatever reason, or because sometimes staying sick is easier, or because I don't really understand how insane I am. Again, not a judgment. It took me 2 years before I was willing to do any kind of work. So I just hope that everybody who wants to come to believe does so as quickly as they can, and they have enough pain to help them see that they are insane in, the best way, and that they find their higher power. So that's all I got.